was a young woman from Leeds called Josie Cunningham. And she was dubbed as the most hated woman in the UK after she received a boob job on the NHS costing around, almost £5,000. Yeah. And so following this, so this was a massive controversy. You know, this was all over the tabloid press, and everyone was kind of cussing and mocking her and calling her a disgrace and a waste of time and space, and what a waste of money. You know, this money could be used to help cure people with diseases, and you're using it for a boob job, etc. So she got a lot of trash talk in the press. But off the back of that, she was able to carve a really convincing story out of that. So she got a publicist, and his name is Rob Cooper. Right. And there was this really interesting documentary that I watched on TV. And really what it showed is how between the two of them, they managed to contrive a story. So she had started her narrative as being the most hated woman in Britain. Yeah. And she kind of relished on that. She was like, you know what? She knows who she is. She knows why she's done what she's done. But if people want to say she's X, Y, and Z, they can do that, because now there's actually a way for her to capitalize on that, and there's a way for her to make money doing that. Right. So in the documentary, what they actually showed is how they actually manipulated social media in order to build a narrative. So, for example, people already had this perception of her that, you know, she was money grabbing and she was like squandering her money and she would dance and that kind of stuff. So one of the things that they did, for example, was when she was writing tweets, they would deliberately put spelling mistakes in the tweets because they knew that would get a backlash. They knew people would talk about that. There was another example where they were out shopping in London, and they would take pictures. Her publicist would take pictures of her with all these bags of designer clothes and designer shoes and designer accessories, etc., and post it on social media, because again, it was painting her to be a villain. Right. So that was really her narrative. She was this villain, she was this controversial figure, and through the image that she was building up and through this narrative that she was creating, she was getting a lot more attention from, you know, TV and magazines, and people just wanting to kind of get a chunk out of the story that she was creating. But it was all fictional. There was elements of truth into it, but it was really exaggerated to kind of emphasize on the public persona that she already had. And then when she was ready to switch up this narrative and switch up this story, they started to contrive other ways to kind of now build up sympathy from the public. And it's this kind of back and forth between, you know, your personal brand and kind of getting that engagement. It kind of shows how this is all like fun and games. A lot of it isn't real, but it's how you can just play social media and play marketing at your own game. So that's kind of like a controversial example, but in real life, you can really take a lot away from that example, because what it's suggesting is that you can use various social media platforms and you can use various marketing channels to help build up those personas that you want people to know. But it's all about staying consistent. You know, like I said earlier, if you're trying to be a business or a brand that you're trying to come across as being friendly or, you know, approachable or affordable, for example, you can't just in the middle of a month, you know, switch up and start being aggressive or using aggressive marketing tactics or showing a complete new side of you. I would say that if you have social media platforms and you know that you're using them for a personal brand, and your mindset is not on that on a particular day because maybe something else has happened in your life, I'd say actually stay away from social media.
I say you should separate your personal social media.
You should separate. If ideally you should have different platforms and different profiles for who you are as a person and who you want to be as, you know, your personal brand. But sometimes, you know, not everyone's that engaged in social media, so it's almost like a struggle just to update one platform than to kind of have two.
And social media is a draw out. In a lot of senses, because sometimes you come on there and you read it, says what's on your mind today, and then you just start saying stuff and start being who you are, and you forget that you've also got, not only have you got your family and your friends on there who know who you are on another day, but you've also got the other people that you're trying to impress upon. that are there, and it's kind of like now you're contradicting, you know, what you're supposed to be doing, and then you affect your business, and then you affect the consistency, because you've got to start again. As soon as you show the opposite and people thought you were something else, and this isn't about, you know, manipulating people or anything like that, but again, just to make sure you don't fall into that, I would say, you know, start a Facebook page. They're free, they take 5 minutes to do, and it's just a page away from your page. It becomes a public page, people can click like, you can post your photos on there, and you just keep it consistent. It takes 5 minutes to update, you know.
Definitely. And also, I mean, with Facebook as well, there's different ways that you can reach your market. You know, you've got your personal page that you can set up, you've got your like page that you can set up, you've got your group page you can set up as well. So perhaps you may have your normal profile as your who you are as a person, nothing to do with your brand or the personal brand that you're trying to create. And then perhaps you may just develop a group or a like page that you can then start to use to carve out a narrative. But at the end of the day, if people know who you are, and if, for example, you're using your real name, you would still need to be quite mindful of your personal page as well, because you just don't want contradictive messages to be seeping back and forth as well.
That's it. And none of us are perfect, you know. We're not saying you have to, you know, go there and pretend to be something you aren't. Some of the time it's a journey in yourself. You're building and constructing yourself at the same time as you're constructing your business, you know. And you know, you're going to fall back into an old narrative sometimes, into an old, you know, personality. But ultimately, all of this is discipline. When you're building a business, it is discipline. You know, you have to be places on time. You have to send them emails. You have to be in contact with people. You have to, you know, and a part of your marketing strategy, as you're talking about perfectly, is about that. It's about, you know, personalizing your brand. But being consistent with it and being aware that this is what you're doing now, and people are looking at you. So, you know, be mindful of that.
That's it. You are visual, and people are definitely looking at you and looking at what you're doing as well. And, you know, people can be very critical as well. And you have to be, you know, conscious of that. And, you know, you have to find ways to kind of remedy that as well, so that when that criticism does come your way, maybe when people are scrutinizing what you're doing, you can kind of counteract that and just keep that narrative and that flow there as well. We're talking about a little bit about, you know, how you can build up this narrative and this story through controversy. But I think for the most part, it's about just being real and being true. Most people that begin their journey into starting a business or developing a product or service really do have a story there already. And they may not realize that they have a story there, but they really do. I mean, you may have been someone who wasn't getting on too well in the jobs market, for example. Maybe you had a few jobs, or you were struggling to find employment, or maybe you know, been into crime in the past or whatever, and there may have been something that inspired you, or there may have been something that triggered you. It may have been starting a family, anything, and from that you then decided to, you know, create your own business. I think for anyone that decides to start their own business from scratch has a story and has an interesting story, and it's about how you can start to tell that story
and incorporate it
with your market. What a lot of businesses do, as I said earlier, is that they separate themselves from their product or service. And I think sometimes you're missing a trick when you do that. Sometimes when you become that face and that person of that product, you are inspiring others to kind of buy into what you're doing. Say, for example, you know, a lot of people out there, it's become a thing quite lately that, you know, they create cupcakes. Let's say, for example, you know, they make cupcakes, they decorate cupcakes, and they sell cupcakes to individuals or when there's events going on. And there's two ways you can kind of brand that. You can brand that just from the product perspective, so no one kind of knows who's behind it. But for most cases, people do know who's, you know, making these cupcakes for you, because really and truly that's part of the trust element. If you're getting food or beverages from someone, you kind of want to know who's behind it, you know, who's creating it, who are the caterers, etc. So you can actually use yourself therefore as part of that brand. You know, put yourself out there, you know, show pictures of you making cakes, you know, show pictures of you thinking about how to develop new styles of decorating, or, you know, new ingredients to put in there, or events that you're going to and seeing people enjoy, you know, your product, your service. You know, put yourself, really integrate yourself into what you're doing, and people really do start to follow that. And as we said, you have to definitely be consistent across all your channels as well. And bear in mind as well that, you know, social media is something that you don't own but you can use. But if you have your your own blog or your website, which is your owned media, that is really your domain where you can really start to develop who you are and how you want people to know. And that usually occurs as well in bios and, you know, profiles that people create. And it's a way for you to say, you know, this is who I was. This is what inspired me to do what I'm doing now. And this is where I want to be.